It's our fireside chat. What to expect? What we want to showcase today is, for students to hear what it's like to study abroad, discover the benefits of study abroad, and all through the voices of some of our working professionals who studied abroad already. Whether you're just starting to explore study abroad or you've already returned from a study abroad program, this session is definitely for you. This evening, we hope to get you excited about studying away from UCLA, not on any one particular program. The focus will not be on program details. We have a handful of other sessions that already delve into these topics during this coming week. So tonight, we want you simply to hear some study abroad stories. So now to introduce our panelists, I'll offer a very brief panelist introduction and then we'll get right to it. I'd like to welcome Katie Pastor, our first panelist and a UCLA grad. Katie was a geography, environmental studies, and communication studies double major. While at UCLA, she studied abroad at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. While abroad, Katie developed an interest in local politics and policy. This led her to then participate on the UC-DC program, where UC students can intern in Washington, DC over the course of a quarter. Katie now works as a communications specialist for the energy program at World Resources Institute. Welcome, Katie. And our next panelist is Arizu Rathani. Arizu is actually a UC Davis grad, a double major in political science and French. Arizu studied abroad at the University of Bordeaux in France, and also like Katie, subsequently participated on the UC-DC program. She pursued graduate studies in journalism at USC and went on to be one of the founding editors of Up First and NPR. Now she serves as an editor and producer for Morning Edition. So welcome you both, and we'll get straight to our questions here. So I'll start off, I guess we'll just kind of switch back and forth. I'd love for both of you to sort of, take a stab at the questions that we have for you. And I'll start with Katie. Could you tell us a bit about, a little bit more about what you do in your current professional role and how you got there? We'd love to hear your trajectory from undergrad up until this point, but feel free to share further back if you wish.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Pastor. I graduated from UCLA in 2017, so just 3.5 short years ago. Now I live here in Washington, D.C., and I work in communications at an environmental nonprofit here called World Resources Institute. I'm focused specifically on our institute's energy program, which works towards a future where all people across the world have access to affordable, reliable, and clean electricity. And my role in communications is specifically focused on everything from under the sun, from writing blogs to op-eds, communicating with journalists, doing web development, graphic design, all sorts of communication functions for our specific energy program. While I was at UCLA, I was very involved in a number of environmental organizations, which many of you may be as well, specifically E3 and what used to be called Ecochella, but is now, I hear, called Coastalong, the bike-powered music festival that started probably 10 years back now. So, and I was also involved in the Daily Bruin doing graphic design there. So yeah, coming out of undergrad, I basically moved to DC soon afterwards. I had an internship at the organization where I work now in a different program, working on our corporate sustainability program. And about a year after that, I took a job at the energy program, and I've been there for the last 2 years.
Thank you, Katie. Arizu, would you like me to repeat the question or are you good? You're on mute.
How about now? Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. My name is Arizu Rathani. I am an editor and field producer at NPR. I work specifically for the flagship program Morning Edition. And a lot of what my job entails is pretty much following a lot of the trends and patterns in everything from national politics to foreign affairs to culture, and trying to figure out ways to cover those issues by talking to people, going to places, figuring out what events are unfolding around us. Essentially, my job is to talk to people to understand who we are, what we believe in any given moment, and where we as a world are headed. And as far as how I got here, I was always really interested in news and current events. I grew up constantly talking about politics at the dinner table. I'm a first generation Iranian American. And so I think I grew up just always very conscious of my background and my heritage. And the older I got, the more curious I would become in that background, and I wanted to explore it more. And so in high school, I took an elective, a language elective. I studied French, and at Davis, I was a double major in political science and French. I took advantage of the study abroad opportunity my junior year. I did a semester abroad, and I graduated in 2008, which was right in the middle of the recession. And I used that opportunity to go back abroad, to go back to Bordeaux, and to teach English to French students, high school students and middle school students. And I came back, I worked for a documentary film company, and that's when I decided to pursue journalism. I kind of at that point had learned that, you know, I wanted traveling and writing and talking to people to be very central to the work that I do. And journalism just spoke to me. And so I applied to various journalism programs. I got a very generous offer from USC. And while I was there, it was a 2-year program. My last year, I got an internship at NPR, the bureau in Culver City. And that internship turned into a temp gig, and the temp gig turned into a full-time offer. And here I am 8 years later.
Thank you, thank you. This time I'll start with Arizu. Some students might know early on, perhaps even in high school, that study abroad is a thing that they're going to do in undergrad. Other students, and I'll include myself, didn't know about study abroad. It's not until perhaps their junior year, one of their classmates tells them about this amazing experience, and next thing I know, I realize, oh, I can afford this, I can use financial aid. So there's a different spectrum of when students, you know, make that decision, like, I will study abroad and I'm going to make this happen. So, you know, what compelled you to study abroad? You know, what was that like for you?
Well, I think I learned about the study abroad program while I was applying for universities. And at that point, I had some older cousins who had already gone through the college experience, and they had also studied abroad, and I'd heard about it through them. And they always described it as this life-changing experience. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. But it was while I was kind of looking at the various options for universities that I thought, you know, going out to school would be fun, but doing schoolwork abroad sounds like a transformative experience, and that's definitely what I want to pursue. I think the thing that sealed the deal for me was just working out the numbers. I mean, I always thought that studying abroad would be really expensive and out of reach for me. And it turns out, at least that year, that it wasn't. It was very comparable to spending a semester at UC Davis. And you know, I looked at the coursework, and I talked to some students who had come back from it, and was really pleased to learn that it was totally within reach. And I spent the first couple of years of college working. I had a little side job, and I knew that if I wanted to do some kind of excursions or traveling on the side, that I would have to kind of maybe support that on my own. And so I spent the first couple of years doing some work and saving some money, and it made it a totally affordable experience. So yeah, I for me, it was kind of learning about it as I was starting the college experience.
Thank you. And Katie, what compelled you to study abroad?
I I was one of those people that always knew I wanted to study abroad. I remember being a little kid and imagining studying abroad and just wanting to do it my whole life. But similarly to Arizu, I didn't really realize it was like a possibility that was within reach, was affordable, would work with my coursework, especially until I got to college. And I will plug IEO. I worked there for a semester when I was in college. So I'm very happy to plug Mauricio and the rest of the team. But the team there was super helpful in helping me figure everything out. I came in, I think when it must have been the end of my sophomore year, and sat down and was like, here's what I'm majoring in, here's my situation. And they just helped me lay everything out from the beginning. And similarly, I knew if I wanted to take trips and do these excursions and those sorts of things, it was something that I would have to plan for. But having an idea of that from the beginning really helped, and having all of the resources at UCLA to help plan for that was really useful and helpful.
Thank you. Then I'll pass it on to Katie right now then. So there's different types of study abroad experiences, and students don't actually often know this because they'll go on one program and that is what study abroad is for them. Some of them, like I know both of you did sort of what we refer to as the traditional immersion model, where you're studying at a local university with local students. Other students might end up doing something like a summer program with UCLA professors. So just to paint a picture for sort of our attendees tonight, you know, there's different academic structures, there's different housing setups, there's different types of courses that you're taking, there's different locations. So what was your study abroad program like? You know, essentially describe what that was like for you.
So my program was housed at the University of Cape Town, so a local university sort of in the middle of the city. I went to class with local students, and I lived in local housing also. It was a giant house with 25 international students from all over the world, both South African, American, from Europe. I mean, we had several students from Korea, just like a fully international house. So it was a little bit of a wild experience, but a very fun one. And we all lived together and went to school at UCT. So I took classes most weekdays. I think I had mostly morning classes. Went to class sort of like I would have at UCLA. And then the weekends were really fun for exploring the city and going on trips and excursions and things like that. My program was a semester, so it was fall. I went fall quarter for UCLA, but it was spring semester for UCT. So a little bit of a change there. It was July through November, because the way their academic year works is slightly different there, but I loved it so much that I actually ended up staying all of December also. And then my parents told me I had to come home for the holidays. Yeah, couldn't recommend it more. That's sort of what it looked like for me.
What did your program look like, Arizu?
So I spent a semester in Bordeaux. I went to the University of Bordeaux. We got there the winter of 2007, so January 2007, and I stayed until the summer. It was like 6 or 7 months total. And I think in our program, which Mauricio, you were there, what was it, like 35, 40 students, all with various degrees of proficiency and fluency in some cases. But the program for me was, I decided to live with a friend of mine. We had a flat right there in the city center, and we both took courses alongside French students at the university. I pursued coursework that would fulfill some of my requirements for my French major and my political science major. So I took an art history class. I took a Western history course and a course on the history of the Holocaust. I was really curious to know how the French viewed certain moments in history. I knew what the American view was. I was curious how the French looked at it. So took courses alongside French students. It was really daunting and challenging at first and intimidating. But I mean, it's amazing how quickly you have no other choice. You just kind of catch up, you get up to speed really fast. And people were very kind and very generous. And I felt that the professors were very understanding. And if you needed more time, they'd give you more time. Students were always there to help. French students were always there to help. And then on weekends when we weren't studying or getting, presentations ready, we could do weekend excursions. Some of it we organized ourselves, and sometimes the UC Broad program would help organize that. But there was never really much downtime. We were always busy. And I think the thing that I would emphasize is that, there's the learning that you do inside the classroom, which is obviously rigorous and challenging and rewarding. There's also the learning that you get outside of the classroom when you get lost in a small town in the city streets, and the metro has broken down, and you got to figure out, like, how do I get home and what are my options? And you learn so much about the culture and people and places when you're just kind of living life, I would say. So I think, like, the studying abroad program, there's a studying you do in the classroom, there's a studying you get outside of the classroom, and it's one grand education. I can't recommend it enough.
All right. So you were talking a little bit of, I feel like you were already highlighting some of these things, but you might have something different for my next question. So the next question, and I'll start with Arizu. Could you share with us one, actually, you were talking about, yes, there's the importance of academics, but there's also what you do outside of it. So what is one academic highlight from your time at the University of Bordeaux, and what is one non-academic highlight from your time in Bordeaux?
For an academic highlight, I would say towards the end of the semester, we had to turn in a pretty huge term paper and also give another presentation for 2 separate courses, obviously in French. And, you start the semester thinking, like, how in the world am I going to do this? I had a pretty good grasp of the language, but not at the point where I felt confident to turn work in or speak in front of a group of people. So the highlight was getting myself to a place where I felt comfortable and confident to submit that work. So that would be my academic highlight. My non-academic highlight would definitely be the friendships made along the way. You make friends with the people in your program who are on this amazing journey with you, and who are also homesick at moments of time and are trying to figure out how to make the best of a situation, and both enjoying the time abroad, but also at times trying to figure out if they made the right choice. I definitely remember my first week there being really, really homesick and wondering, like, did I make the right decision here? Am I one of those people who's going to have to go home? But I would advise anyone who's considering this to really just stick it out and to hang in there. And if you do feel like that, to just to stick with it, give it some time. I mean, it is a really magical experience. And I think, to get back to your question, the relationships are what make the program so magical. I mean, I still have friends, French friends who I stay in touch with, dear friends, and learned so much through them over the years. I mean, just yesterday, I caught up with a friend of mine who was my buddy when I first arrived in Bordeaux, and she kind of took me under her wing and showed me how to do things and where to go and who to talk to, who not to talk to. And so these are friendships that will last you a lifetime.
And actually, before I move on to Katie, I just want to share a very quick anecdote that you might be, you're talking about students that might get there and, start feeling homesick. I just want to share a very anonymous story here. I had a student once who, studied abroad in a country in Europe, and they were there for 48 hours. And they're like, I'm coming home. I can't do this. It's too much. And, I talked to him. I think we actually talked on the phone. He called over to our office, and I said, what, just stick it out. Just stay it out this week if you, of course, if you feel comfortable, right? Obviously, if you're not safe, then do what you need to do. And students spend a semester and then they extend it for a full year. So
That's amazing.
it goes to show, just give it some time, and maybe it'll work out. But Katie, an academic highlight and a non-academic highlight from your time in South Africa.
Yeah, totally. I think probably my academic highlight is also sort of a non-academic one. It's kind of what you guys were talking a little bit about with your learning occurring outside of the classroom. One thing that was really unique about South Africa while I was there, and still is unique about South Africa, a couple years before I came to the university, there was this big movement that began called Rhodes Must Fall, which was all about decolonizing the university. It was founded by Cecil Rhodes, who was this South African politician, but was also this big proponent of apartheid. And it was widely known. Students were outraged about it. It was very controversial on campus, and obviously is a terrible thing. And so there was this massive political movement that sort of broke out on campus maybe 2 years before I got there. So there were protests, there were rallies, and they were ongoing when I arrived at school too. And I actually ended up living with one of the guys who founded the movement. He just happened to live in my giant international student house. So I got to know him quite well. And it was really interesting because at school I took a couple of political science classes alongside an urban planning class. And it was really cool to go to class and talk about the policies and the histories that contributed to an apartheid society and the dismantling of it in the 90s, and kind of the remnants and the consequences that remain today, even in things like modern urban planning or architecture, or those sorts of things that you don't think about. And then to come home and to have these conversations with my roommate, who was sort of leading the charge on this movement, and going to the protests on the weekends, and attending the rallies, and like trying to be as supportive and learn as much as I could that way. It was a really unique experience to kind of hear about like why things were that way, and then see the action happening on the ground at school, but outside of school also. So that was my academic highlight. And then my non-academic highlight, I think I couldn't agree more. I think it's the friendships, for sure. All of my friends, not all of my friends, but most of my friends who I met abroad, I'm still in touch with today, and I still have many close friendships. In fact, one of the people who I was randomly assigned to live with in Cape Town is now my boyfriend, and we've been together 5 years, and we live together here in DC. So I'm not saying you will find love, but it is possible. But yeah, the friendships are both my friendships with South African students and other international students have really stayed strong, and I think is like the number one reason to study abroad is the people you'll meet and the stories you'll hear and those connections that you'll make.
That's so amazing. I couldn't agree more. So we'll go with Katie next. So university study abroad programs laud the benefits of study abroad. We say, you're going to develop intercultural competency. You're going to develop a foreign language. You're going to develop global networks. We say that there's all these benefits. So what is one or two developments that you personally attributed to studying abroad?
So one that I would definitely say that's sort of relevant to what I was just talking about was sort of this getting involved in these rallies and these protests and doing all this learning outside of the classroom as well, sort of kicked off my interest in public policy and politics. And that's sort of the reason that I ended up applying to the UCDC program, and then ultimately ended up working in public policy here. So I think like that was being in Cape Town was a really interesting and pivotal moment in my life and in my career, where I really started thinking about politics and how it applied to me and my friends and my surroundings in a way that I hadn't thought about before. I was not involved in politics. I did not consider myself a political person. And now I love to phone bank and, go to rallies and, get as involved as possible. So I would say that was one way that I changed. And then the other way, more generally, was I feel like I became a much more independent and confident person. Before I went abroad, I remember being on the plane coming to South Africa and thinking like, is this the wrong thing? I'm going to be 30 at a 30-hour plane ride away from my friends and family. I don't know anyone. This is on the other side of the world. Like, is this the right thing? And then coming back on the plane back and feeling like I could not have felt more different. I felt like, I was able to do that. I stuck it out for 6 months. I was able to create all these friendships. I had the best time of my life at that point. Like, it was just so fabulous. Like, if I could do that, like, what else could I do? And I found that I, was just like, it just gave me such like a confidence boost to have that experience under my belt. And then also figuring things out while you're there. It is the little things like getting lost in the city and trying to find your way back in like they call them mini buses in South Africa. Like, am I gonna jump on this like speeding van back to my house? I guess so. Like, you just kind of have to figure it out as you go. So becoming more independent and more confident, I think, were big assets that I gained abroad.
Thank you. Arizu, any personal developments that you attribute to studying abroad?
I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from my study abroad experience was, it shattered kind of all notions of American exceptionalism, which, whether we're conscious of it or not, we are taught that America is just a cut above the rest, right? The world revolves around us. The world looks up to us. We are the biggest, we are the richest, we are the most powerful. And, there's truth to that. There's definitely truth to that. But I think spending a significant time abroad allows you to look at how other cultures, other countries, other people have confronted certain issues and problems, and how there are problems kind of back at home base that you might not be totally plugged into or aware about, and how there might be opportunities to learn from how they're dealing with like healthcare, or how they're dealing with really solid transportation systems, how they're dealing with right-wing extremism, which now we're dealing with in some senses. There's just so many lessons to learn from people when you break outside of your comfort zone. And I think that whether it's colleagues at work or neighbors that you live with, or even people within the same family can hold different values and have different opinions and think different ways. It's such a lesson in how to reach out and connect with people who are very much unlike you. It challenges you to empathize. It challenges you to just kind of sit in someone else's shoes for a second and understand where they're coming from and why they think the way they think and why the world is the way it is. And I think that's one of the it's one of the biggest legacies from my semester abroad that I think I carry with me to this day. I mean, it's so central to the work that I do today. So yeah, I think that was one of the biggest developments that I came home with.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. And so now sort of transitioning a little bit more in terms of the professional aspects of your lives. If this applies to you, what impact did study abroad have on your professional trajectory? We'll start with Arizu.
I think for me, it gave me a leg up in that it proved a passion and a capability, an ability to understand people and places. That is such a big part of journalism. It's trying to reach out and build bridges and to dialogue with people. And I think spending time abroad allowed me to demonstrate that that's something that I'm very comfortable doing. There's obviously the language skills that I have under my belt. And, if I look back on the last 10 years, there have been some pretty big news events that have happened in France. There have been terrorist attacks, right? The Charlie Hebdo satirical newspaper attack, the attack at the Bataclan, the theater in Paris. Have been really important to the work that I do. And so I think throughout my career trajectory, I mean, my time in France has helped me a lot.
Okay. Katie?
Yeah, I think probably for me, my experience with one of my study away programs has mostly come from my time with the UCDC program.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think one of the things that I really gained from UCT coming out of that experience was I did want to work at an international organization if possible. And the organization that I work at now has, we have 8 international offices, and I've been lucky enough to visit our office in India and on a work trip, and being able to work with international colleagues has really been a fascinating experience and something that I sort of thought I wanted to do coming out of studying abroad at UCT. But UCDC kind of kicked that off for me. I mean, that program, and I can just talk a little bit about what it is a quarter here in DC where you take classes here at there's a UC Center here in downtown DC. You take classes there, and then you do an internship on the side. So my internship was at EPA, and I worked in the Intergovernmental Relations Department, specifically looking at communication failures within the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, and how communication broke down there and ultimately contributed to this big public health failure that we all know about. And so that really kind of kicked off my interest in, what can I be doing in communications, in environmental policy, and where do those two things intersect, and how can I get involved in that and learn more about that in my career. So I think that was sort of a more hands-on, career-focused experience that I had at a study away program, which I think you could also get in plenty of abroad programs. But for me, it just happened to happen here.
No, it's okay. You can promote UCDC. Like I said, today I'm not telling students to go to a particular place. I mean, I think as you've all collectively shared, there's so much learning that happens outside of the classroom. So, if there's a student going to the UC Center Sacramento program or the UC Natural Reserve program, UC DC, Indigenous Native Studies in Hawaii, go do something that, takes you a little bit outside of UCLA or your respective UC campus. So thank you both. So I want to expand a little bit more on, learning more a little bit about your profession. So I'll start off with Katie. Do you have any advice for students seeking to pursue careers in your field? What would you say for students looking to get into your field?
The biggest piece of advice I have, I think generally, and this applies maybe to any career, but especially when in policy, is networking. Talk to as many people as possible. Nobody wants to hear this piece of advice, especially not in college, but just try to meet as many people as you can, have as many conversations as you can. That will definitely open doors. And for me, one of the biggest things that I used at UCLA was office hours. Going to office hours was such a great opportunity and something that I didn't really start doing until after I came back from abroad. But ultimately, for me, I had office hours with a professor that I went to pretty regularly, and ultimately he connected me with someone at the organization that I work at now, and I spoke with him, and that sort of led me here. So I think there are lots of hidden opportunities in those conversations, and taking advantage of them, even if they seem scary, is totally worth it. It's oftentimes just a conversation. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just going in and talking about your interests and sort of connecting on those things.
So I have a quick follow-up question. So the literature suggests that, students that reach out to their professors that go to office hours, have much better outcomes in their undergraduate career. By any chance, if you can touch on this, if not, of course, don't worry, but do you have any advice for any student that has reservations about, entering that space? There's this faculty member, there's a professor, and, sometimes we're seen, oh, wow, I'm so nervous. Do you have any advice for students to break into those spaces?
Well, I was definitely that student before my senior year of college. And I think ultimately, like, you just have to remember that they're regular people too, and they only want to help you. They really just only want to help you. I can't tell you the number of professors that I spoke to who were like, I'm only interested in helping students, and like not that many people come to office hours. So it really is a resource that is there for you, is free, and is usable. And try it once, and then you'll see it's not that bad.
Thank you, Katie. Arizu, any advice for students wishing to pursue journalism?
Yeah, I think, one of the most valuable pieces of advice I can give to anyone who wants to pursue journalism is probably just be open to listening to anyone. I mean, that could be people who are most unlike you. I would say it's especially people who are most unlike you. No matter how offensive they might be, no matter how hard it might be, I think journalists have a responsibility to accept the fact that certain things exist in the world, right? The world of journalism is not about covering the world as it should be. It's about covering the world as it is, and capturing that. And I think, we're in a time and space where I think more than ever, it's become hard for people to just listen to one another. Understandably, there's a lot of tension in the air these days, and there are certain ideas and philosophies that I think we didn't really know existed. But I think it's our responsibility, even beyond journalism, I think just as citizens, to just be aware of the various kinds of ideas that exist out there and to engage with them, to maybe one day negate them and to disagree with them and to fight against it. But you have to at least understand that it's there. You cannot bury your head in the sand. So I think, if you want to pursue journalism, you should seek out ideas that are very much unlike your own. If there is a guest speaker coming into your classroom and that person has ideas that are radically different than yours, and you don't stand by that, it's really important to just be open to it, to accept that those ideas exist. So I know that's a little controversial because, on campuses these days, and I think it's a good thing, right? We're talking about trigger warnings, and we're talking about sensitive spaces, and we're allowing for victims to have a more prominent place at the table to tell other people what they are and are not comfortable with. And I think there's a space for that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't respect those feelings as well, but I think we want to be careful not to censor other people. There are countries that do that. There are cultures that do that. I think America, what's made America America, is that we've allowed for this to be a marketplace of ideas. And so, yeah, just be open to hearing people out.
No, thank you. Thank you for providing those very, very important insights. Thank you, Arizu. We're probably going to get closer to wrapping up here. So I might, let's see, I have two questions to pick from. I'll go with regrets. I'll start with Arizu. Any study abroad regret, something that you didn't take advantage during your time abroad that you wish you had?
Definitely wish I had done a full year. 6 months just zips by. And I regret not living with a French family. I think I definitely had an opportunity to really immerse myself in the culture and the language. I very specifically chose not to do Paris. I wanted to go to Bordeaux where fewer people spoke English. But I think I had a lot of friends who did their study abroad experience with a French family, especially families with children. It's just another window into that culture, right? How do they raise children? What kinds of conversations are had at the dinner table? Children are also very honest. So if you're learning a language, they can sometimes be some of the best instructors. So I think that's my second regret.
Interesting. All right, thank you. Katie, any regrets from your time in South Africa?
It's hard to think of some. I would say I also would have been happy to stay a year. But I think if anything, similar, I don't know if I would have preferred to live with a South African family simply because my experience in my house was so valuable and so great. But I do think at UCT, it just so happens that like clubs and extracurriculars are very open, and international students and study abroad students are encouraged to join and participate in those activities. And I think that's something that I wish I had done a little bit more of, just to kind of expand my network there. Most of my friends were from my classes and from my house, and meeting other people through other friends. But I think that would have been a really cool opportunity. There are so many activities going on campus to get involved in other things there.
Thank you both. Again, I have a few more questions that I could ask, but just in the interest of time, I'm just gonna kind of see if there's any of our attendees have any questions for our panelists. If there's no questions, then I'll just continue asking some of the questions that I have here, but we'll give it about maybe some few seconds to see if there's any questions that come through. And you know, I'll give folks some time, so I'll ask you another question. If something pops up, then we'll hopefully take a stab at it. Let's see. Actually, this one will be for Katie. Actually, you studied abroad in a country that, in the study abroad world, we refer to as, you know, an off the beaten path destination for study abroad. The majority of our students, you know, still, you know, Europe is a very popular destination to study abroad. You know, I think it's one of the traditional places that people know of for study abroad. But you studied abroad in South Africa. You know, why should a student consider study abroad in South Africa? I mean, I feel like you've in a way you've already addressed it, you know, with your responses. But anything special you would say for students to consider not the beaten path destination, or again specifically South Africa?
I think I decided on South Africa just because I wanted somewhere that I wanted to be somewhere that felt very different from UCLA, and I thought going somewhere like UCT would be a little bit more different than that experience, or what I perceived I might get at a European university. That being said, I have plenty of friends who studied abroad in Europe and had an amazing experience, and obviously you guys did too, and learned so much, and just had a fabulous time. But I think, you know, you really do get some like very unique experiences and windows into completely different cultures by studying abroad in some of these off the beaten path destinations. And I really got what I wanted from that. And then one other thing that I just really, going into studying abroad, that I was really thinking about was, I knew a lot of people who studied abroad in Europe were, you know, sort of like visiting different cities all over the continent during their time abroad. And I kind of wanted to get to know Cape Town in South Africa. And it was sort of nice to like be centered there and really get a feel for the city. I mean, there are so many different amazing neighborhoods to visit and so much history to dive into in one place. And so while it was like a little bit more isolating, I know in Europe you can jump on the train and go anywhere in a couple hours. And that's certainly not the case in South Africa, but you can rent a car and drive to the desert and backpack in the desert for a week, which is something I did on my spring break. So that having those kinds of like options and experiences was really fascinating and intriguing to me, and something that I am really happy that I did.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so maybe we'll then wrap it up with our last question. We'll start with Arzu and conclude with Katie. Any words of encouragement for students on the fence about studying abroad?
I think the older one gets, the fewer opportunities one has to really go out and have the time to explore and kind of figure out who you are and what you want in life. And it's such a gift that in the middle of your youth, you get to have the time and the space to just go somewhere and not know what's on the other side. I mean, that's just so thrilling and it's so magical. And if you are, on the fence about it, I just say, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to have a few nights of maybe feeling homesick like I did. You'll get through it. You're going to make amazing friendships. You're going to come out a totally different person. And I think it'll ultimately be one of the more magical experiences of your life. I mean, this was like, for me, 13 years ago now, and I still think it's one of the more transformative experiences of my life. So I say go for it.
I agree.
I mean, let me just also say, look at how fast COVID-19 upended our lives, right? Like, just go for it. You don't know when something like this is going to happen and totally derail your plans. So most things in life can be undone. I'll just put it that way.
Thank you, Arizu. Katie, before I pass the same question on to you, we did get a question come through. I'm actually going to take a stab at it, but if any of you want to add something particular more, feel free to chime in. I just want to provide a little bit of context to the question. So the question came in: do you recommend homestay or living in an apartment with other students? The framework that I want to add is that the housing options actually vary from one program to another. So one program might be that you don't get a say. You're living with in a shared apartment with your UC peers only. In another setup, you might be a homestay option is the only option. In some of our travel study faculty-led programs, it's almost like a little hotel with a little kitchenette. So every program is going to have very different housing. Now, there are some programs where you do get to choose. You get to, fill out a housing questionnaire and say, I want the homestay option, or, I want the shared apartment with local students or with UC students. Again, even those options are going to vary from one program to another. And the other component that I want to add is that there's no wrong or right way to pick your housing options. Arizu just shared with her that one of her regrets is not doing the homestay option, but the homestay option might not be for everybody, right? If someone's looking for that really more immersive opportunity and having a little bit of flipping a coin, living in someone else's home in different culture, sometimes it's going to be a match, and the reality is sometimes it doesn't. And you know what? Some students might be risk averse and go, well, I don't want to have that experience, but maybe this is the years of wisdom that you talk about, Arizu. But later on, you're going to realize that learning study abroad, you don't just sign up for study abroad and then say you're going to take these courses and you're going to have X experience. You already have an idea of what you're going to experience, but part of it is having a poopy homestay experience, and you learn from it, and I'm here representing the study abroad office. I'm not supposed to tell you these things, but those are learning experience. Getting lost is part of that learning experience. So to answer your question, do I recommend? It really depends on what your goals are for study abroad. And that's going to be a personal choice. If you talk to a study abroad advisor, they're going to give you some of the pros and cons for that specific program, but ultimately it's going to be a personal choice. So I hope I've answered that question. Panelists, is there anything else that you want to add to that with recommendation between a homestay or living in an apartment with other students?
I don't even know if I had the choice. I can't remember at all. But I loved living with other students. And if you get the chance to live with local students, do it. You'll learn so much from them. They'll introduce you to people. You'll host the best parties. It's great.
Oh, it's true. And yeah, I mean, Mauricio, you were totally right. Sometimes it's a wonderful match and sometimes it's not. If you are someone with dietary restrictions, you know, you might want to reconsider. And you're living under their roof, their rules. So it just, yeah, it really depends on who you are. It is like the first step in that journey of discovering who you are. So yeah, I say don't be shy. Just really sit and think about who you are and what your values and priorities are. And if that's living on your own or living with another UCDC student, sorry, not UCDC, another UC student or another foreign student, that's fine. That's totally fine. Do what's right for you.
Thank you. We have about 2 minutes left, so maybe we can wrap up. Katie, any words of encouragement for students on the fence about studying abroad?
I mean, all I can really say is that I was pretty unsure at the beginning. I was very sure going into it that I wanted to do it. I was pretty unsure getting on the plane and then arriving at the cold, empty dorm that I stayed in the first night, not knowing anyone, 30 hours away from home, if it was the right decision. And I mean, it was like hands down my favorite part of my college experience, by far. I had the best time. I met the best people. It was such an important part of what's helped create my life today. Yeah, I really can't recommend it enough. Looking back, it is like the highlight of my time in college, was that semester. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to share some words of wisdom with our prospective students or even some of our students that might have already studied abroad. I want to leave students with a few notes here. The UCLA Study Abroad office is located in Murphy Hall. Historically, right now with Safer at Home directives, we're not in that physical space. We're not answering our phones with a phone number. The best way to get a hold of us is info@ieo.ucla.edu, but we've also adapted to our current environment. We're now offering virtual advising. Visit our ieo.ucla.edu/contact page to learn the more specific details. We're doing drop-in advising. So if you just have general questions, don't know where to start, Monday through Friday, you can just do drop-in advising. There's no appointments. We do this all via Zoom. Students have really enjoyed having that resource available to them. And for those that are a little bit more along the exploratory process, you've already explored our websites, you already know a little bit more about a program, or you want to compare two specific programs in a location, there's one-on-one advising that's also available at our office. That same link will give you information on how to schedule those appointments with our advisors that are either assigned by specific programs or specific regions of the world. So those are different ways to get a hold of us. And this wraps up our fireside chat with our Study Abroad returnee professionals. Again, thank you both for taking your time. To our webinar participants, I hope that our panelists have inspired you to further pursue study abroad during your time at UCLA. The webinar is part of our Global Learning Opportunities Week series. We encourage you to explore the rest of the week's sessions that, again, delve deeper into more specific the specific details of programs, scholarships, programs by specific country, and identity-based sessions as well. After the sessions air, you'll also be able to access them in the on-demand section of our event page. And we hope to connect with you soon. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good evening.